Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here with me. We are addressing democracy tonight. Democracy in the United States, looking at democracy in Asia, especially the aspirations of the people of Hong Kong. Over these last 2 weeks, you've seen much news. Hong Kong's 12 hours ahead, so it's a little out of phase with the news cycle in the United States, but you certainly see the headlines of protests, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kong peoples turning out to demand that the promises be kept made in 1997, the handover from Britain to the mainland. Promises be kept for democratically participating in elections by 2017. Of recent, the regime in Beijing has declared unapologetically that they will not keep the promise, that they will betray the handover promise of 1997. That led to these protests. The protests were a confrontation. There was a suggestion of violence. It didn't come to that. There's said to be a negotiation underway right now, and Gordon Chang is going to bring us up to date on that, and then Phelim Kine, who's the Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch Asia Division, will comment on his opinion of where the protest movement, now quiet, is going. Gordon, negotiations, that was the word used when the students went back to school, when the workforce in Occupy Central, that's what it's called, that's the main business center, went back to work. What negotiations?
The negotiations are going to be primarily over the 2017 election procedures for chief executive of Hong Kong. The chief executive is the top political officer, like the governor. And Beijing has made it very clear that although there can be universal suffrage, it's going to control the nominating process so tightly that only its candidates can run for election. The whole issue is going to be who is allowed to run for chief executive in 2017.
Phelim Kine joins us. Phelim, the protests, were you surprised by the scale of it and by the discipline of the students and the other Hong Kong citizens turning out? Good evening to you, Phelim.
Good evening, John. I would say I was inspired by that display of mass of support for principles of democracy and universal human rights. And I think that the people of Hong Kong, really deserve so much credit and praise for standing up to its own government, but also to the well-known and well-tested brutality of the Chinese government with regards to mass protests.
And Phelim, right now we have only a couple hundred people in on the streets instead of a couple 100,000. Many people say that these protests have completely fizzled out. How do you look at this?
Gordon, this has been a mass political teach-in for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers. This has been a crash course, a street-side crash course in the principles of democracy and universal human rights. Right now, it's recess. We have the core, the hardcore diehards still in the street, but people have learned that they can stand up to their government. They have learned that it's their responsibility to hold their government's feet to the fire for rights and freedoms that they are deserved to get. And if and when necessary, they will come back. They've learned that their government blinked and that they hold power.
Yeah, my sense is that now the students are negotiating with the government over the election procedures. Nobody in Hong Kong really wants to see very large demonstrations, but these talks with the government are going to break down because the government has said there is no way that they can compromise because this is Beijing's decision and they have no way that they can change it. So essentially they're going to have an impasse, and when that impasse occurs, I think we're going to see people out on the streets in large numbers again, because then it'll be very clear that Beijing is not willing to give an inch on the core issue, which is, of course, democracy.
I think you're absolutely right, Gordon. It's a case of an unstoppable force and an immovable object, and the immovable object here is Beijing, and the unstoppable force are the people of Hong Kong, with the students at their core, but of course tens of thousands of others from every other social strata and age group in Hong Kong who have the same ideas.
As the protests went on, Phelim, it emerged that a demand was the resignation of C.Y. Leung, the appointed chief executive of Hong Kong. Is that a possible climb down for Beijing and a compromise that would restore peace to Hong Kong?
John, I would say that CY Leung has greatly disappointed his masters, and that he will have an abbreviated political career. It would be too much of a climb down and a face loss for him to be removed anytime soon. But I would say in the coming months we can expect CY Leung to, for reasons, perhaps family reasons or personal health, that he will have to be ushered off the stage, and someone brought in, and perhaps in a transitional role, who is less objectionable to the people of Hong Kong, to try to find some sort of middle path.
I understand, Gordon, from your report that CY Leung has a rosy future.
Yeah, he certainly does. At least he's got a lot of money. In the last 24 hours, it's been reported that CY Leung has this arrangement that shoveled something like 50 million Hong Kong dollars to him over the last couple of years or so from an Australian businessman. And this has gotten people in Hong Kong to think a little bit about their chief executive, who they didn't like in the first place. But they've sort of seen him now in a different light, and certainly not very flattering.
Gordon, just a moment here. $50 million from a national of another country into the hands of the chief executive. That seems to contradict the anti-corruption program that's being run on the mainland, or at least it suggests that Xi Jinping has some work to do.
Well, he certainly does. And some people are saying that, why did this revelation come at this particular time? And people are speculating that the Chinese had decided that now is the time to ditch CY. And the way we're going to do it is we're not going to get rid of him because of the protests or pro-democracy. No, we're going to get rid of him because the guy took too much money. And so, who knows? But this is an interesting theory.
Phelim, are you surprised to hear that $50 million is paid by an Australian national to the leader of Hong Kong? Were you cynical enough beforehand to expect this to happen, Phelim?
John, all I can say about this is that it is murky indeed, and that it will only add to the already deep antipathy and suspicion and mistrust that so many Hong Kongers already feel towards CY Leung, at the Hong Kong government, and its Chinese masters.
Gordon, I'm puzzled here, right? Okay, Joe Yongkong, he was the security boss. I think his family stole $17 billion, and they've been wiped out of history. So CY Leung takes $50 million. That's at least worth a week in jail, something like that, right?
Well, we don't know exactly what the terms are when he got this money, so I can't say that it was a crime, but nonetheless, it doesn't look good.
Wait. The mayor of New York takes $50 million. We don't even wait for the word crime, Gordon. We don't even...
Yeah, but the rules in Hong Kong are different, and so, there's a lot that we got to know, but this really, really stinks.
Phelim, the discipline of the students, did that surprise you?
It didn't, to be honest, because you got to remember that Occupy Central really began. It was 3 years ago. They started around the same time as people started converging on Zuccotti Park in New York, and they were small, disciplined, and they have developed this infrastructure and this network that when push came to shove, and when it became critical mass, it held together. I thought it spoke volumes for really the discipline and the integrity of the Hong Kong people in really asserting their rights.
Phelim Kine is the Deputy Director, Human Rights Watch Asia Division. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. Democracy Tonight, Democracy in Asia. I'm John Batchelor.